Well, that building housed data centers and internet hosting services. Luckily, the fire was contained in the roof. There was no major damage to those centers. But what can you do if your company's services could be affected by fire or other natural disasters? I'm joined by Lee Smith. He's director at D. Smith and Associates. Lee, good afternoon to you. This fire could have been a lot more devastating for the companies if there was major damage. What could they have done to help?
Well, the first thing about fires, good afternoon, Bhavna. The first thing about fires is obviously you need to detect them as early as possible, specifically when you're dealing with mission-critical data centers, as is housed in that complex. Once the fire is detected, obviously human safety comes up first. And then depending on the incident and the size of the incident and the impact, organizations may introduce business recovery procedures in terms of disaster, and then they might switch over from one data center, their services, to another data center. In terms of internet services, provided to the organization, some of them may not have that type of capability, depending on what they have purchased and what type of redundancy they have built into their own IT capability. So from that perspective, there may be some companies that could be impacted by the business impact from the fire itself, although there's not any direct impact to the data center itself.
Lee, like you were saying, companies, especially those that were housed in the Westwood building, many financial companies do have off-site facilities. What advice do you have to companies of that nature when it comes to backing up data?
Well, the first rule of IT, as I've learned many years ago, is always have a backup. The second that goes with that is you must be able to recover the information and the backed up data in these types of circumstances. So organizations must always remain prepared and be able to have procedures and standard operating procedures and disaster procedures in place that afford them the opportunity to test prior, and also in the event of a disaster such as this, if it were to affect them, that they must be able to recover the data center and the data in the data center elsewhere in the shortest possible time, obviously with the data integrity remaining intact.
I suppose it's not just one of those things that affects companies, Lee, but individuals and people at home also. You know, we tend to store everything these days on hard drives. What advice do you have for people at home who tend to be more technologically savvy?
Well, back up early and often. As soon as you get the opportunity, back up your data. Use an off-site storage disk drive, for example, that you plug in on a daily basis or even a weekly basis. But make sure that what you have on your hard drives, on your laptops, and all of those types of devices is backed up. Some organizations provide services where you can back up into the cloud nowadays as well. And there you can lift the information into the cloud. And if something happens and you need to restore and get the backup from there, then you can do that as well. But at the very least, you must always have at least one copy of your data backed up somewhere that you know that you can recover.
I really hope people are listening to what you're saying. It's so important, not just for photographs. Lee, thank you for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it.